Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Up until recently, traveling, working, living, and enjoying our neighbors to the south was pretty common as Canadians. Especially if you hold a passport or if you're a part of the Nexus program. Heading to the US as a Canadian, it's a relatively routine process. One that doesn't really involve thinking of any risks to safety when traveling, especially any adverse risks to safety, such as being taken by American immigration and customs enforcement officers and being thrown into jail, right? Well, the unimaginable became a reality for one Canadian. A Canadian that crossed her T's and dotted her I's and still somehow ended up behind bars for close to 2 weeks, despite being told she did nothing wrong and that the reason she was in there was unbeknownst to anyone that held her freedom in their hands. I'm Maria Kestane, and today on The Big Story, I'm speaking to Jasmine Mooney to hear her story. A story that mirrors that of thousands of detainees across American detention facilities, one that speaks louder volumes about the ways in which arbitrary power intersects with the chase for profit with lives on the line. Jasmine, thank you for joining us today. I don't even know where to begin with your story. It's more of a nightmare than just a bad run-in with law enforcement. But before we get into the details, how are you feeling today, being able to tell this story from the other side of it?
I'm very grateful that I have done a lot of healing work in the past couple of years. If I hadn't done that work, I would definitely not be talking to you, to be honest. I have been able to bounce back and get through it quickly. And now I am choosing to use my voice in hopes to help others in this situation.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's get into it right from the beginning. You are a Canadian citizen with a U.S. work visa. You were detained by American Immigration and Customs Enforcement for several weeks that spanned across several facilities across several states. Take us right from the beginning. What happened?
Yeah, so I originally applied for my work visa a year ago. And when I first applied, it was denied for some minor paperwork issues, which at the time I really didn't think was a big deal because the border agent was like, you can come back tomorrow and reapply if you want. I'm talking so minor, I was missing a letterhead on one of my letters. Very minor. And so my lawyer was in San Diego and he's like, Jasmine, just come down here. I'm going to come with you and make sure that there's no issues with your paperwork moving forward. And I went with him and got my visa within half an hour. And then I was living in California for the past year, traveling back and forth. I never had any issues until about 4 months ago. I was traveling back to California from Canada and I got stopped. And the officer was like, why were you denied your visa and then went to the San Diego border to get it? That seems really shady. And I explained my situation. And he goes, well, you can't process visas there. I did. And my lawyer's been doing this for 20 years. And then he's like, well, it wasn't processed properly. So at this point, it just seemed like they were trying to find anything, to be quite frank. And so I ended up getting taken into secondary, and I work in health and wellness. So I was working, I work for a company called Holy Water, and it's beverages. And they went through the company, and I ended up getting my visa revoked because there was a discrepancy on me working for a company that uses hemp. which I wasn't aware that that was an issue either. So long story short, they revoked my visa and told me that I needed to reapply. And that's when I went. I waited a few months, and a few weeks ago, I went back to where my visa was processed before, and reapplied for my TN visa. And when I was there, I was in there for probably 6 hours, and it was such a roller coaster. Originally, she said I wasn't eligible for this visa, and I said I literally just had this visa. Then they said I couldn't get it because my passport was going to expire in 2 years. And then they changed their mind and said, actually, we can give you the visa. After they called their supervisor and found out that I am eligible. Like, it was just so much back and forth. There's just no consistency. And every time that I ask someone, I ask lawyers, I ask border agents, it's a different story. Everyone has a different opinion on the right and wrong way to do anything. Anyways, so by the end of this, the woman goes, okay, so I'm sorry, we actually can't process you here. In order to get your visa, you need to go through the consulate. And I said, I had no idea. I apologize. I will do that. And she goes, no, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not in trouble. You're not a criminal. And that's when I was like, that's such an odd thing to say. But yes, I know I'm not a criminal. And then she says, but because you had two issues before, we need to send you back to Canada. And in my head, I just assumed that I would book a flight to get back to Canada, and that would be that.
So you were in San Diego at the time?
Yeah, it's super easy. You just take the tram back to LA. So I was sitting there, and then this man comes out and he said, Jasmine, please follow me. And so I just followed him. And that's like, I had no idea what was about to happen. And he took me to this room, and they ripped my bags from my hand. They took my phone. They put me hands against the wall. A woman came and started patting me down. They took off my shoes. They ripped my shoelaces out. And at that moment, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know, why are they ripping my shoelaces out? Later, I find out that so you don't hang yourself in prison. And then I was taken to this, to a cell. Like, it was just like this tiny little cell. There were 5 other girls in there. I was handed this like little mat and this aluminum foil. And they're like, this is your blanket. And I'm like, what do you mean this is my blanket? And then I walk in, and all these girls are laying on the ground with this aluminum foil wrapped around them. It looked like a bunch of dead bodies in there. That's where it started. That's where this craziness started.
I mean, you walking into this room, like, you're still in the San Diego, like, border enforcement office, like, and you don't, like, this is, like, you're just following this guy's lead. You walk into this room, you see these women with the foil blankets over top. What's running through your mind? Like, am I in the wrong place?
To be honest, I think I went into shock. Like, I think my body went into complete shock. I was in there for 48 hours, and it is fluorescent lights, freezing cold. I literally laid on my back with this aluminum foil over me, and I just remember meditating. I was like, just sleep and meditate to get through this. You're not going to be in here this long. But like, you never know what time it is. You never know what day it is, right? Like, the lights are on 24/7. They come and grab you for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but they just bring you to like this other little room and then give you some snacks. I looked at the food. I was like, no, I'm not eating that. So I actually didn't eat for the first 6 days. I was too scared to eat the food. And I was like, I can just fast. Like, I fast a lot. So
What was the food like? Like, what were the conditions?
I have never seen food look like this, to be honest. The meat was colors I'd never seen. It was like slush, like sludge. The best way to describe it, it's like it was food that had been expired for years and that no one would buy, and they just went and got it to spend zero money on anything. Like there were vegetables, but they were like rubber. I remember was like, okay, I'm still in here and it's day 6, like I need to try and eat. And I remember eating this carrot and it just like exploded with this weird, disgusting juice. And I like spat it out and I was like, oh my God, like I cannot. I barely ate in 2 weeks, to be honest. I would just try and pick out what I could. But yeah.
Oh God. So you're in this room with these 5 women for the past 48 hours and then what happens?
So on day 3, then I was finally got to talk to an officer, and that's when I could use my first phone call. So I called my best friend. I was like, you need to call my lawyers, you need to call my family, you need to get all of our friends on this, like anyone you can think of, because I don't know what's going on and I don't know how long I'm going to be in here for. And so then the officer handed me all this paperwork and she's like, so you're being banned from America for 5 years unless you appeal to the consulate. Sign here, sign here, sign here. And she's like, but honestly, it doesn't matter if you sign or not because this is happening regardless. And then I go, okay, well, how long am I going to be here for? And she goes, I'm not your case officer. I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, can you please tell them I will pay for my flight home? Like, I will do anything just to get out of here. Like, how can I get out of here? I don't know. And this was a very consistent thing I heard my entire duration. Every single officer, I don't know if they're trained to do this or they genuinely don't know, but I'm not your case officer. I don't know. I'm just doing my job. That's what I heard over and over and over again.
That must have been so frustrating. We'll touch on that later. But so now you're signing these papers, and then what?
So I signed those papers, and then I was taken to the jail. And so I was transferred to the jail in San Diego, and you get fully put in chains. So they wrap chains around your stomach. They put handcuffs on your hands and attach your hands to your stomach, and then put handcuffs on your feet. And I was put into this prison bus with the other girls that I was with in my cell, and we were all taken to jail. And when you got there, that's when you start the whole onboarding process that takes forever. So you have to go through a series of interviews, psychological interviews. They asked me the oddest questions. They were like, have you ever communicated with extraterrestrial beings or aliens? And they're like, do voices in your head ever tell you to do things? They're like, have you ever been sexually assaulted? They're like, are you straight, or are you bisexual? Are you a lesbian? Have you ever tried to kill yourself? Like, just like all of these questions. And then they take you and they do a series of medical. But you have to do a pregnancy test and these allergy tests. That's when we had to shower. So they made us shower and put on the prison uniform in there. They go through all of your stuff. What else do they do? It's an extremely long process. And then while you're waiting, you're just sitting in these literal ice boxes. So they're these cells that are freezing cold, and you don't get a pillow, you don't get a blanket or anything. And I'm talking like 10, 12 hours in these things. So I literally just huddled on a ball, like in a ball, trying to stay warm in this cell.
Right. Yeah. I like, what were you even like thinking? Like cause going back to when that officer a few days ago at this point told you, you didn't do anything criminal, you're not a criminal. And then you get processed in this jail. Are you not like, what What is happening?
So I started having a serious panic attack because I kept asking all of the officers, like, can you please tell me something? Like, how long am I going to be in here? And this man literally said to me, he's like, listen, I'm not your case manager. You could be in here for days, you could be in here for weeks, but I'm telling you right now, you need to mentally prepare yourself to be in here for months. And that's when I started panicking, like serious panicking.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, what was the point that kind of clicked in your head that you were like, oh, I'm actually not going home. Like, I'm staying here. There's no way out right now. What was that point?
So that was when I got taken. Then once you get onboarded, they take you to the real prison. And so I walk in and there's about, I'd say like 140, 150 girls. And it's literally like the movies. So 2 rows of cells on each side, common area in the middle. And I was taken to my cell and I just remember looking and there was pillows and blankets and I just went straight to sleep and I just curled up and I just cried. Like, I was like, what is happening? Like, I was so exhausted and so, so overwhelmed. I don't think I left my bed for 24 hours. Like, I was just distraught. So it wasn't until after that when I'm like, okay, I'm still here. Like, it's time to like go talk to someone and see if I can figure this out. Like, you can't just stay in here. You need to be strong and you need to figure this out. So that's when I went and I met, I don't know what you call him, the warden of the person that runs the prison, and kind of got the lay of the land. And okay, so how do I use the phone? How do I contact my friend? And like, you have to remember, like, they don't give you your phone to check for numbers or anything. So they give you one call, and thank God I remembered my best friend's number and I was able to contact her. And so that's when I was able to call her, and she was like, Jasmine, we've called lawyers, we've called everyone we can get like any information from. And she's like, this is crazy. Like, I'm getting told so many different things. And there's people that think you're going to be in there for a few more days. There's people that think you're going to be in there for a few more weeks. Like, there's no consistency, and we're doing everything that we can to get you out of there. So at that point, I was like, I just need to be strong. I just need to get through this. But what truly got me through it mentally was when I started meeting and talking to the other women in there. So finally, I was like, okay, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Like, you should go be social. You should meet other people. I saw that we were allowed outside, and I was like, okay, go get some fresh air. I mean, it's not really fresh air. Like, it's like this tiny little corridor where you can see some blue sky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was like, anything. So that was literally when I started meeting people for the first time and sitting and talking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the girls didn't speak English, but I would find translators for each language. So I had like my Chinese translator, my Spanish translator, my Indian translator. Like, it was like so interesting. It was from then on when I started talking to everyone else that I was like, okay, you literally are not allowed to complain about anything. You are so in such a better situation than every single person here, that I was so humbled that my entire attitude moving forward completely shifted. I'm like, you need to be so grateful. And that is truly what got me through this. And just meeting the women and the community that we built and the unity that I felt and the love and the support. I mean, these women have nothing and everything. It like, didn't matter what age you were, what race you were, what God you prayed to. Like everyone just came together unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And that support and that love, like truly is what got me through this.
It's interesting the fact that like hearing you say like, I have to stop feeling sorry for myself. I need to be more grateful. And you're like giving yourself these reality checks, but you're still in like ICE, like you're still in these detention centers where it is totally valid to feel sorry for yourself and to feel like, oh my God, what's happening? So the fact that you're like telling yourself these things, like what kind of stories were you hearing that made you like kind of like snap out of that?
I mean, first of all, the women in there have been in there for months, like literally months. They don't have the resources that I have. They don't know when they're getting out. You know, when you hear about these women who are seeking asylum and they sold everything that they own and their children are back in their countries and they just trekked 2-3 months to get to America and now they are in jail and they are treated like a criminal. And you need to remember every single woman that I met does not have a criminal record. And every single one of them. And so you're hearing these stories of what these women have gone through, how long they have placed in the system. They have no idea when they're going to see their families, their husbands, their children. And I just made a choice. I was like, I'm just going to be here for moral support. I know that I'm not going to be in here. At least I hope I'm not going to be in here for that long. But a part of me, there's just something that I felt. I'm like, listen, I know I'm going to get out of here sooner than everyone else. Like, I just want to listen. I was so just in awe of the strength that these women had and just how kind they all were. And then I would just watch everyone come together. And I just wanted to help in any way that I could. And so the first prison I was in, once you get into your routine, you're like, okay, this is manageable. Like, this isn't going to just completely destroy me. It wasn't until I got transferred, that's when I was like, this is the most messed up thing I have ever witnessed.
So you were in San Diego for this past part of the story, correct?
Yes. So I was in San Diego, and then I forget if it was like my third or fourth night. I was woken up in the middle of the night, and this guard is like, pack all your stuff, you're leaving. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I get to go. Okay, so excited. And then I come downstairs, and there was 10 other girls standing there, and everyone's crying. But not like happy tears, like distraught tears. And I was like, what is going on? And the girls who had been there for a while, they know the ins and outs, right? So they're like, we're being transferred. And I'm like, what does that mean? And being transferred is probably one of the worst experiences. You have to, first of all, you're taken in the middle of the night. They have to process every single person out of the prison. So they give you all of the clothes that you came in. You're placed back in the freezing cold ice boxes. And then we were put back into the chains, and they drove us from San Diego to Arizona. So you're sitting on this prison bus for 5 hours in chains. And then when you get to the prison, they have to onboard every single person again. And there was probably like 50 of us. And so you can imagine how long that takes. You have to go through all of the medical tests, the psychological tests, the fingerprints, the interviews. Like, you have to do everything again. And then you are finally placed back into a cell. But you're like, the entire process took 24 hours. I'm not exaggerating. It was exactly 24 hours. You do not sleep. They barely feed you. And by the time you get there, I felt like I was hallucinating.
Sure.
But then you have to, like, everything all the routine, all of the friends that you just made, everything that you were like, okay, I'm getting my bearings. You have to start that from scratch. And like every system from like getting your phone set up, like my girlfriend, she put money on my commissary and put money on my phone account. That's all gone. Because now you're put into a new jail where it's an entirely new system and you have to start over again. So you're just like, it's such a manipulation and like just you're so defeated because you have to start all over again. And then the conditions of this jail were just awful. They placed 30 of us into one cell. There's no outdoors. There's nothing inside. It's open bathrooms. Everyone's sharing everything. And there's some like picnic tables where you eat. But other than that, there's nothing in there. And you don't leave it. Like the other jail, at least you can like step outside your cell and roam around in the common area. And they have like hours to go outside. This had nothing, like literally nothing. And this is when people really started freaking out. Oh, and so they didn't have, I wasn't even allowed a phone call at this place. Like no communication. And that's when I started freaking out because I'm like, how am I supposed to get in contact with my best friend who's handling everything? And so like morale was at an all-time low to the point where women in there were like having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. They were all writing me letters because they couldn't contact their families. And they're like, Jasmine, you're the first person that's going to get out from any of us for sure. Like, can you please send these letters to our families? Like, it was crazy.
What were the guards like during all of this? Like, what were they doing, when someone was having a panic attack?
They are awful. Like, I want to just like speak really like one thing, like I'm obsessed with psychology and I consider myself a very kind person. And one thing for me was I'm an observer and I would just observe how these guards talked to us and treated us. And I just couldn't believe, like I surround myself with good people. So when you're in situations like that, I haven't experienced that before really, because it's like constant and you're just getting like one of the worst things in that jail was the strict schedule, and they would come in and just scream at you. I'm talking breakfast was at 5 a.m. They'd come up, get up, girls, get up. So you have 10 minutes to eat. And it's just like the energy of that. I did a lot of research when I came out of there. And because I was like, why are the cells freezing cold? I'm talking freezing. Why are they doing all of the things? And then you realize like it truly is like a psychological abuse. Like everything that they do is a form of torture. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Right? I just have so many questions. But I think they want you weak. They don't want you to talk back. They don't want you to stand up for yourself. They just like every single thing in that system is meant to break you. And it broke people. Like I'm talking the things that I saw, just the energy of the women, it was so heartbreaking. Again, like I said, I have done so much work on myself where I was refused to allow any of that behavior to break me. But it was tough. Like even like I broke a couple of times and I'm like, Jasmine, you cannot like stop. Do not cry. Like you need to be strong. You're gonna get through this. But yeah, it's just like it was so many different emotions in there.
Yeah, I'm sure. So now you're in this facility and what happens next? Like you're out now, obviously it wasn't a multi-month stay.
I was in there for, I think it was 12 days from start to finish. So just under 2 weeks. So what ended up happening was I was like, okay, I need to be strong and I need to make a plan here. So there was like this weird tablet on one of the walls in the cell. and we figured out how to email from it. So I ended up emailing my CEO because I didn't know anyone else's email address. Like you really realize that you don't know anyone's email or phone number. So anyone listening, I highly suggest memorizing some contacts in case you're in an emergency. So I emailed him and I'm like, DJ, you need to get me in contact with Britt. So and it worked. I was like, oh my God, it worked. So he got me Britt's email, my best friend, and I started emailing back and forth with her. And I was like, Brittany, you need to go to the media. Like, I don't know how else I'm going to, because she was telling me, she's like, Jasmine, we have done everything. We got you the top immigration lawyer. We have phone calls being made, politicians. Your dad called the consulate, has all of these politicians advocating for you. It was just like, they couldn't believe how difficult this was to get me out of there. And I was like, go to the media. So we were communicating back and forth via email. And obviously you become super close with all the other girls in there. So one of the Chinese girls was, who spoke English was like, Jasmine, you can have my phone call. So she ended up giving me her phone call, and I was able to contact Britt, who then put me through to this reporter who had been working on other people's cases. And I did an interview with him that he just absolutely blasted. And literally the second that my story came out, ICE contacted my lawyer and was like, oh, Jasmine, yeah, she's here. We weren't aware that she would pay for her flight home. Yep, yeah, no problem. We'll get her out right away. And I was released the next day. And that was a complete lie, because I said from day one that I would pay for my flight home. I even put it in the tablet request. So if I were to subpoena them, they would see that I put that in my notes.
That is insane. And that must have been so infuriating, like the switch up in energy and essentially like the flat out lie of it all.
Yeah. And the worst part, when I got out, I had to get transferred back to San Diego. So I had to do the transfer all over again, put back into the chains, put back to the other jail. I had the full prison experience.
I mean, I'm glad you're out. I'm glad you're okay. Honestly, to be frank, I'm honestly just surprised that you're able to talk about the experience so freely and even laugh about certain parts of it when, this is probably one of the most traumatic experiences that someone could go through. Where are you finding this strength?
Yeah, to be honest, I promised the women in there, like truly, I promised them that I would use my voice. No one talks about this. People are scared to talk about this. Or they come out of it in just complete shambles. I've had so many lawyers reach out to me because they cannot believe what is happening at the borders right now. And so many of them were like, Jasmine, we cannot get over how you're handling this. Like, we have grown men who are suffering extreme PTSD, and they were only in there a few days. I'm so grateful. And I have my ways and of how I handle trauma, but what they do in there to these people and to me is so inhumane and just sick. Like, it is so sick and twisted and disgusting. And I just can't believe that it's real. Like, when I got home, my friends, I woke up the next day and it was so funny because they were like, we don't know how she's going to be. Like, I don't know if she's going to come out of her room for a few days, and I got up and I was just like, I don't even know how to process this because it doesn't even feel real. Like, I know that just happened, but it feels like I never even left. Like, it's just, I can't explain the feeling. It's so, so bizarre.
I could only imagine the feeling of seeing things that are familiar to you, your home, the Canadian flag, your parents, your friends. What was it like when you first got out?
It's interesting. There's so many layers to to my experience, but one thing that I remember thinking when I was in there, it's like, okay, when you are stripped of everything and everything is taken from you, you really realize that the only thing that matters in life are your friends and family. Like truly, that's all you think about. I mean, I also thought about food because I hadn't eaten in 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, you're like, nothing else matters. That car doesn't matter. That purse doesn't matter. That party doesn't matter. Like all that matters, all that you want is to see the people that you love. And so I remember when I landed, my two best friends and my mom picked me up from the airport, and we got home, and I hadn't slept in 24 hours, but I was so excited to see them that we ended up staying up till like 6 a.m. Like I hadn't slept in 30 something hours, but I was just like so happy. I was so grateful. I was so excited to live life. Like I said, from everything that I witnessed in there and everyone else's story, like I just got out of there being like, I am not going to let this break me. I'm going to do something good. I'm going to turn the situation into something good. And I actually like when I was on the plane and I was allowed to use my iPad and my phone for the first time, I wrote my entire essay that I published on the flight home. Like it just like flowed. I mean, when I was in jail, I took so pages and pages of notes, and I had all the women's letters, and I was just like, it literally just like bursted out of me, and I couldn't wait to get this on paper.
Well, Jasmine, I'm glad you're back home and that you're safe, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me today.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to use my voice for all the women who don't have a voice right now. I really appreciate it.
That was The Big Story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Maria Kestane. Thanks for listening.